Welcome to solverfy.
Weak acid strong base titrations start at a low pH since you're starting with just acid. This acid, let's call it HA, reacts with any added strong base to create water and the weak acid's conjugate base. Once enough of this conjugate base is formed, the solution becomes a buffer since we have the weak acid that we had at the beginning and the newly formed conjugate base. So the titration goes into what's called the buffer region, which is this region right here in blue. So in the buffer region, we have the weak acid, we have the weak acid's conjugate base, and we have water. Any hydroxide ions from the strong base is going to immediately react with the weak acid to form that conjugate base in water. So we have these three molecules present in the buffer region. Eventually, the weak acid will run out, and we will have only water and conjugate base in the solution. When this happens, we're at the equivalence point. So at the equivalence point, we have no more weak acid, but just its conjugate base and water. In weak base, strong acid titrations, the titration curve will look similar, but sort of inverted. The pH will start high and decrease, as opposed to starting low and increasing. But the buffer region is still at the beginning, and the equivalence point is still in the middle. The equation will look something like weak base plus strong acid forms water and weak acid. At the buffer region, we'll have the weak base that we started with, A minus, and the conjugate acid and water that is formed when adding the strong acid. Once we get to the equivalence point, we'll have run out of that weak base that we started with. So we'll have just water and conjugate acid of the starting weak base.